Hello, my name is Mitchell Rose, and I'm a chief cook and bottle washer in the incident management space for SAP. A quick disclaimer, the opinions expressed by this speaker are their own and do not necessarily represent the views of SAP and should be used for entertainment purposes only. So my talk today will be on our creation of major incident as a service. So today, Summit21 recommends that you start with why to inspire action. So my why for this talk is to challenge and encourage you in thinking what you can own and give you an idea of how this helped us. Hopefully, I'll be able to demonstrate how the ownership of a small team armed with a vision, opportunity, and a lot of perseverance is making a big difference even at a company the size of SAP. Major incident as a service came as an idea from my technical operations and service management background. And this in many companies I work for, I have observed a pattern where successful cloud teams, they always took an ownership of their service. And it seemed only natural to take a familiar concept to me and apply it to our opportunity. Our vision, or why, for major incident as a service has really been to reduce friction and increase transparency for our users. And this users may be engineers, execs, etc. So in my talk today, I'll be running through, I'll show you the general landscape that we had to work with, the approach we took, and some of the key learnings, and I'll end with some words of encouragement for you. And as I go through this, I would invite you to think about what you can own. So this hamburger looking model was the landscape. It's roughly the landscape of SAP. So this is what we had and still have in mind for our final scope. It shows a little bit of how we're organized in SAP. As you'll see, there's the customer and business facing applications are sitting on top of line of services. And at the bottom, you'll see the infrastructure that's made up of hyperscalers, et cetera. And as you can imagine, just looking at this, there's a lot of breadth and depth, and it can be extremely overwhelming, or it was for us. And if you consider SAP's vision is to help the world run better and improve people's lives, how that translates to us on the ground is really for us operational types, right? This means fewer and less impactful degradations and disruptions. And you'll see here some of the acronyms we use are LOB, that's line of business. And that would be, think of it as, maybe customer facing apps, and line of service, that is the LOS portion. Again, this really fills out the hamburger thing. So we like hamburgers, so this looked like as good a place to start as any to start making things more manageable for us. The infrastructure specifically was a space that we could own and we had support. That's that bottom layer. And the bun, there we go. To further reduce this scope, we just focused on major incident response, and this was to differentiate an initiative that was going on across SAP to roll out ServiceNow. Our goals here for transforming the major incident operational model across teams and orgs, but to do it at scale. So we needed to, maintain consistency, make sure we were being efficient and effective on how we were doing this. We rallied around a set of best of breed tools that helped map our vision. And one key tool was PagerDuty, which I guess is why I was invited to speak at Summit, right? As with all great stories and projects, the level and efforts of change we significantly underestimated, and this was really one of our greatest challenges. A little bit on the SAP background is SAP is really, it's a consensus-driven culture, and it can take a significant amount of cussing and discussing until everyone agrees. We're an engineering first company, so a lot of homegrown tools were already in place. Right, we're leaders in ERP, finance, manufacturing, digital supply chain, et cetera. So that presented some challenges, and there was, while each line of business or line of service, they each had their own best practices, if you would, that operated great in their silos, but across teams, there wasn't a lot of alignment. And then practically, like even things around our contact information. So think of contact information as we're trying to find experts during a major incident, things like that, or we need to notify key stakeholders. Every team had their own data sources. Some were on spreadsheets, on wikis, wherever. They were all over the place. So there were a lot of different data sources. A lot of them over time were outdated with the contacts, inconsistent. And some of them even had complex contact business rules, right? If it's Thursday and I'm at the bar, then contact my pal, whatever. It was just crazy. And there were also many points of entry, think email, chat, tools, etc. So what you'll see is for our group specifically, so again, in that infrastructure piece, we're part of the Global Cloud Services group, that infrastructure layer within SAP, and we take care of all the hyperscalers, which all the applications and other services are sitting on top of. So we had incongruent operating models. Again, we had different methodologies for calling out what priority or severity was for an incident. Some teams used a DevOps approach, some were more traditional ops. And how we did stakeholder comms were different, and a lot of some groups were vendorized on the front end, and then some were FTE led. There was a lot of cross-team variability. We've talked about the number of entry points, email, chat, phones. We had over 8 hotlines. There's well over 3 ticketing systems being used. A lot of manual processing. There was operational complexity because of all these different tools and methodologies, really tech-focused groups instead of, and I mean that in terms of not thinking in terms of services. So it was sometimes it got really unclear on who was the owner of a specific service. And then of course we have different levels of maturity, operational maturity. So as time progressed, we learn more about each team's pain points, and we learn to embrace change and remain flexible. Some of the core tenets that we brought in with us, that we started with, that I think have helped us throughout this journey, is really the initial focus was major incident response. So we ring-fenced what we were trying to solve for immediately. And we wanted to make sure we could have the biggest impact and the space that we could actually own, because we had that support. So our tenants were largely, we wanted to build this as a service. So we took ownership for the platform. This is the care and feeding, the global management, the design, content for enablement, onboarding, etc. And we wanted to be very consultative, but not just by ourselves. We wanted to have a crowdsourced body of knowledge, if you would, a community that could help out. Team enabling, we needed to make sure that we were adding value in whatever we did. So some teams we would chat with along the way, there just wasn't high value for our service, and we were fine with that. We didn't try to sell them or talk them into that. We started out with, again, core tenet was light on governance. We wanted to really rely more heavily on guidance. But the governance, we wanted to hold tight, and we wanted to make sure it made sense and was, again, added to that value. Flexibility, we wanted to ensure people could work where they want. This was very important, and that if we're allowing people and teams to work wherever they normally work out of, whether that's Slack, Jira, Teams, ServiceNow, PagerDuty, etc., that the more sources of data that we could pull together, it just helped in our continuous improvement and learnings. We wanted to enable self-serve from the beginning. For adding new users, we wanted them to be able to do that. For integrations, we wanted to have a tool and methodology where they could do that, where they could do their own configurations. And then another big tenet was we iterated a lot. So we wanted to make sure that that as a tenant, that we were not waiting on perfection to get something moving. So we would take baby steps. The approach that we settled on was this, what you see on the screen is this crawl, walk, run. We're pretty much out of the crawl phase now, but it may be helpful to make sure you understand what we're talking about here. So it's crawl, this again, it's, think of a baby crawling. It's, we just wanted to get PagerDuty working and part of this framework. So executive support we had for the global cloud services. So we were able to get it in a single unit. So we focused on that org. We did a lot of discovery. Discovery, when I say that term, it's really, we met with many tech teams to get a baseline of what their current team major incident processes were, what the key measures that their management looked at, what the structures, operating models, and a lot of what their pain points were. We settled on an MVP and did a lot of the architectural. We kept technical and business services up front so that we kept speaking in those terms to, again, start driving ownership with them on their services. And the governance we applied to naming. That was probably our key governance item, was around object naming in PagerDuty. So we set that up early, and that's protected us and helped us in so many areas. So glad we came up with that up front, and that was a recommendation by PagerDuty actually, which was great. We started a lot with manual, again, crawl. It's create incidents manually. Let's get the bridges going manually. Let's provision things manually, right? Let's get teams and all that in, just so that we understood enough of the process in depth so that we could iterate and we could also automate. We established, primary notification. We established PagerDuty as that source, and we made it as bi-directional as possible. So think of in Microsoft Teams, in Slack, and these other areas where we could set up bi-directional connectivity. We absolutely wanted to, so that we could get some immediate value out of transparency across platforms. And we talked about the self-serve mentality and the object creation, all that good stuff. Then walk, which is currently where we're at. We're using the business services and technical services in tighter orchestration. We have we're pushing a lot of integrations. So we're helping with monitoring, ticketing, communications, all that. And we have teams getting educated on event rules, utilizing event rules, AI, ML capabilities, starting to take heavy use of the status dashboard, analytics, postmortems, and a lot of those automations we're heavily leveraging response plays, provisioning through Terraform, things like that. And where we want to be in the future is really looking at a lot of that change identification and troubleshooting, the run books, the past events, known errors database, and resetting, hitting a new baseline for us. This is a little of the major incident framework that we worked out. This is looking at it from a priority or severity state. So this was where we landed after several iterations and seemed to kind of best tell our story. Again, major incident focused and team enabled, and it's what we could own. So we focused on that top layer a lot. The goal was to make it simple, scalable, understandable, and really comprehensive across SAP. We were focused first and foremost with GCS, but again, had that bigger SAP vision in mind. We established a set of criteria for what's a major incident, how is that different than a P1, P2? If everything's a P1, then nothing's a P1, right? And then when it came to P3 and P through P5, then we really kind of pushed a lot of that at the team level. And these would be, individual tech teams instead of being centrally managed or owned by us. Again, about keeping it simple. every line of business had their own major incident team. And so it was easy to introduce PagerDuty as a possibility to bring them all together for that cross line of business transparency and coordination for major incidents. So this gave us a reduced scope, and that meant less change and adoption was needed, fewer licenses needed. Not as great for the sales guys, but again, long-term thinking, it's better. And it helped us to have the most visible and largest impact for our customers. Tools, ServiceNow, as you see in this diagram, this is our was selected as our ITSM tool selected, and we're using it as our like data at rest. So we try to write everything that PagerDuty does would have an endpoint in ServiceNow. And we really wanted to partner and expand the ServiceNow capabilities across all teams in SAP, right? Because some people are working out of ServiceNow, some in PagerDuty, some in other platforms, Jira, etc. Here's another view of what we use for our rollout. Again, we started at that bottom layer there, the blue at where it's the GCS. At the core, we just brought in we even within GCS brought it down to only the core infrastructure teams and focused on the status dashboard and those comms at the executive level. And the idea is at the phase 1 layer, this is where we're working right now, and this is to get different business units or LOBs onboarded, just their major incident team, because we figured, hey, if we can get their major incident teams onboarded, it's lighter weight to get them on, and then once they're on at the major incident level, they can keep using their existing processes, and then as their tech teams see value or there's better coordination, then you could slow roll each of the tech teams that represent that line of business. And the idea is on the right, as these adoptions take place, there's greater business value, and we can get into those more advanced capabilities. When it comes to outcomes, some of the outcomes that we've been able to see out of this is really uniting people. So we've been able to align many disparate teams. We've been able to bring together core business and technical teams around a common operational model that's very customer. So again, reducing complexity, reducing variability, and using a common framework and technology, and to help drive that clear ownership of a service. Running as a service, we're doing this. So that's what's incredible. And we've developed service assistance. So we have tech teams coming to us. We're not really running out. We haven't as much run out and tried to get people to get on the platform. It's word of mouth coming to us saying we've got to be on this PagerDuty thing. To the point of, and you know, don't underestimate this. We're not part of an IT group where we can just put an IT tax on PagerDuty. We actually cross-charge monthly for each tech team for their PagerDuty licenses. And what that's done is it gives them some ownership, right? They're financially committed, and it causes us to really earn our spot every month, right? It's we have to have a valuable service that they're willing to pay for out of their budget, out of their independent budget. So it's really speaking a lot of that customer insistence. We've got a scalable, what we feel is pretty scalable governance and guidance methodology in place, which is we started with a team of 2, and we're not much bigger than that on a you know, they're not, and we have some of these people are not even fully dedicated to PagerDuty. So it's a small group that's running this in a big way. We're reducing impact and duration. So initial KPIs are showing improvements on our ability to respond and engage the right people at the right time. That's been key for us. We're improving in maturity. Our operation Our operational maturity is improving across all the teams. We're able to consolidate a lot of our tools and just get down to a core set of tools. And really outcomes for the team that supports PagerDuty is you really get that sense of we're making a difference. And so there's been a lot of job satisfaction from that. And for the tech teams, we continually hear that they're having a better on-call experience. They're able to take a data-driven approach to their continuous improvement and visibility. That's just really cool. And then every presentation, I guess, has to have some by the numbers thing. So as far as numbers are concerned, these are some of the measures we use to back up the why we even started this thing. So we've been able to reduce our MTTR, mean time to resolution, by half. We've successfully handled 132,000 events. This is just since April, and have had like 479 major incidents just in Q2. And all those were handled through PagerDuty. Meantime to detect. So the sooner we can know about something, the better. So that is improved by 91%. And we're actually now in the process of moving those signals closer and closer to the experts who can actually resolve that, and coming up with a methodology for automation and driving this down. Meantime to bridge, maybe unusual number for some, but was critical on how quickly we could spin up a bridge. We improved that by 80%. Some of the items here are really embracing the change was probably one of our key lessons learned. And so embrace the change. That's kind of, here are some of our lessons learned. So our biggest learning was really the power and the satisfaction of ownership. And then remembering, always keeping in front and foremost our customers and stakeholders. We did this through discovery, through ongoing dialogue with some of the tech teams to make sure that we're continuing to iterate and bring them value. Highly recommend that you start small, you plan big, and iterate. So we practice ruthless prioritization. I learned that from Amazon, and it's kind of held through in this project as well. Gain leadership and buy-in. I can't underestimate the value of marketing. So starting like with things like the status dashboard and bulk uploading stakeholders, we should have done that much earlier to get executives engaged. That would have been very helpful, and is helpful now. Establish a level of urgency so people are moving forward. They're not waiting. Keeping low governance has been really helpful, because if it's low governance, tech teams will do it. The higher the bar is for what they need to do for an integration or a configuration change, if they have to wait 3 months, they're just less compelled and will go do their own thing. Provide focus on value versus cost. We've taken a very consultative approach. We've helped drive ownership with them in that self-serve model. That's been very helpful for us, and helps us to again, get out of the cost game. Don't underestimate the cost of change, the change in each of these tech teams for us to get them to embody this tool, the processes, all this good stuff. It takes some time. Would highly encourage that you stay curious. We learn things every day. We're learning new things on how to use our solution, and be persistent, be consistent, and most of all, have fun. So, I would kind of close out with the pre-close, I guess, would be, what can you own? Here's an acronym that Jennifer Webb came up with, which it seemed to fit very well with this talk and with what we're doing. I would highly recommend you just do a screen grab of this and look at it later and see if there's anything that you can take forward. So in closing, I would invite you to ask, what can you own?